Jim Montgomery fully expects Jeremy Swayman to be at Boston Bruins training camp. That and what else we learned from this weekend's Fan Fest on an all new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Monday, August 26th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, X, Instagram, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Now, over the weekend, the Boston Bruins hosted their annual Fan Fest at 3 different locations. On Friday, they were in Lewiston, Maine. On Saturday, they were in Lowell. And on Sunday, they were in Plymouth. And we got a lot of good stuff out of some of the people who were there, by the way of quotes, getting ready for the training camp, etc. And the first thing I wanted to highlight was head coach Jim Montgomery kicking off the unofficial start of the season at FanFest in Maine. And he was asked about goaltender Jeremy Swayman. Now, this comes after team president Cam Neely last week said he believes something will get done soon. CEO Charlie Jacobs noted that signing Swayman is obviously unfinished business for the team's offseason. Head coach Jim Montgomery said he saw Jeremy last week at Ray Bourque's golf tournament, and he said Swayman and he had a great conversation about leading, needing to become a leader as part of the Bruins. Now, Jim Montgomery has, of course, nothing to do with the contract situation. That's not part of his job detail. He said, quote, "My job is connection with the players and how we're going to be good this year. And I have no doubt Jeremy Swayman will be a Bruin at the start of camp. Will be ready to go," end quote. Now, Jim Montgomery will be leaning more heavily, of course, on Swayman as his bona fide, elite level number 1 goalie for the season after Linus Ullmark was traded to the Ottawa Senators this past, July. And with Joonas Korpisalo coming in as the backup, he's coming off a pretty rough season with the Ottawa Senators. He's kind of unknown for the Bruins, for head coach Jim Montgomery. Even if he ends up being even as somewhere, a bit less than Linus Ullmark. Don't forget, it took Ullmark quite a bit of time to get acclimated to the Bruins system, to get up to speed with their style of play, with the players, with the city, with head coach Jim Montgomery, then Bruce Cassidy, with head goalie coach Bob Essensa. So it takes some time. That's what I'm trying to say, for Korpisalo to get incorporated into all things Bruins and all things Boston. So Swayman will be counted on to lead the way from day one. You do not want Korpisalo starting opening night. So the fact that Neely's confident, Jacobs is somewhat confident, Montgomery confident, that's all well and good. But until something actually happens, there's still going to be that lingering doubt as to whether or not Swayman will be signed prior to training camp and that he will be a participant from or even prior to day one. Now, again, Cam Neely said not every negotiation is as smooth as you'd like it. The fan base would certainly love to have something done by now. That goes without saying. But he's fully confident that both sides will come to an agreement before too long. Swayman is in the area. He participated in a triathlon last week. He was at Ray Bork's golf tournament. He's been seen at Warrior Ice Arena and around the Bruins. So it's not as if he's in hiding or not willing to engage. So hopefully the two sides this week will have some formal meetings and sit down and get something done. Swayman, again, expected to be at training camp and a full participant, as Jim Montgomery is going to be leaning on him quite heavily this season. The Bruins' success last year was largely predicated on that goaltending tandem of Swayman and Ullmark. That was what kept them afloat. Not even afloat, above water. We'll talk later on about David Pastrnak and his comments on the playoff run against the Toronto Maple Leafs into the Florida Panthers. Swayman was a huge reason why the Bruins got to the second round and got to game 6 of that series. Huge reason why the Bruins were so successful last year, and they can't afford to not have him hitting the ground running on day one, freshly signed, taken care of, and ready to lead this team into the future. So Montgomery's confident. Again, what are they going to say, though? Yeah, we're planning for all things. We're confident with Korpisalo if Swayman's not there. Bussy as the backup. Yeah, they're not going to come out and say that. I'm sure until something happens, there will be lingering doubt as to whether or not something actually will get done. But we still have, 3 weeks now until training camp begins. Starts on the 18th, so 3 weeks on Wednesday. Still plenty of time for something to get done, and hopefully that indeed does happen here sooner than later, although it's already been much later than anticipated. 2 other guys are ready to go for training camp. Spoke over the weekend, that being Matt Poitras and Charlie Coyle, and we'll discuss what they had to say at FanFest here as the podcast continues. Football season is right around the corner, and you've heard about us talk about FanDuel quite a lot over the summer, and for good reason. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and they've got something a little different for you here today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just go to FanDuel, put $5 down on over-under for wins on the Patriots, for example, and get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, it's kind of hard to believe that Charlie Coyle is now one of the longest tenured Bruins. Only Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Brandon Carlo, Charlie McAvoy, and Trent Frederick have been in black and gold longer than the 32-year-old. And he had one of his best seasons as a Bruin last year, 60 points, while having an elevated role following the retirements of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. And he's expecting that he can take even another step here coming up in 2024-25. Speaking at FanFest over the weekend, he said having another year under the belt and with Bergeron and Krejci gone, kind of knowing what to expect, everyone's role kind of changed a little bit. There's more responsibility put on some guys, and he wants more responsibility on his shoulders. He said, quote, "That's why you play. You want that." And he got a little more of that playing in different situations last year. That's huge. That can only help get acclimated with that. He wants to be with guys he wants to be a guy that plays in all sorts of roles and be important to the team. We all do. And quote, "I think we can take another step forward here this year." And that's really encouraging. Obviously, the Bruins went a step or maybe a couple steps further than people expected last year. A lot of people didn't think they'd make the playoffs. Not a lot of people thought they would beat the Toronto Maple Leafs and push the Florida Panthers to a Game 6. Now, the Bruins, of course, added some players in the offseason. They added Elias Lindholm, who could push Zacha to the wing. Pavel Zacha could push Charlie Coyle to second or maybe third line center role if Zacha remains at center. They added Nikita Zadorov, Max Jones, Mark Kastelik, and Coyle feels like these guys are going to help them against those more bruising opponents like the Panthers. That was one of the knocks on the Bruins. You saw Brad Marchand get literally knocked out of the series. Perhaps the Bruins needed a bit more snarl, a bit more grit, a bit more physicality, and Coyle loves the signings. He said a lot of the guys, Kastelik too, who was part of the trade involving Linus Ullmark, adding a little bit of grit. You can never have enough of those on the team. It's a great thing to have. Guys who work hard, can play the game well. It's huge. It's going to add to their identity a little bit. When you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines that can wear teams down, it can be a bit much to defend, and he's looking forward to having that. The Bruins have a lot of good things to build on. That's the way they need to play, and that's playing the right way. They got to do more of that. Now, what's projected is a second line featuring Coyle, Brad Marchand, and who knows? Perhaps it will be Trent Frederick who goes up and plays his off wing and can contribute top 6 numbers, as did Jake DeBrusk. Maybe it's Morgan Geekie, who is a right shot center who can play the wing and did so in the playoffs last year. Or maybe it's a blue chip prospect like Fabian Lysell, who has all kinds of tantalizing skills that could work well playing alongside veterans like Coyle and Marchand, who can kind of carry the load more defensively and free up Lysell to thrive. And Coyle's kind of used to that revolving door, playing up and down the lineup, wing, center, different line mates. And he's just hoping somebody steps up and takes the initiative. Everybody's got to make the team earn a spot, and that's the mindset going into training camp. He, even himself, wants to earn a spot out there. However it works out, whatever the coaches think, he's going to play to the best of his ability, whether it's with Marshy or whoever else, and going to do the best he can. And that's all that you can ask for. So I love that mindset for Coyle, even at 32, even after coming off a huge year. He wants to push it even further, to take a next step, and to help the team take that next step as well. Another guy who could help take this team to a next step is Mason Lohrei, John Beecher, and Matt Poitras. All 3 of those guys were at FanFest in Lowell on Saturday. And while Beecher and Lohrei were able to contribute in the playoffs, Matt Poitras was not, as he was sidelined with a season-ending shoulder injury in January. He says it feels good now. It's been a long summer. His season ended way too early, and he's been in training mode for a while. The shoulder feels good, and he's been doing normal training, normal skating for the last couple of months. His season last year featured a surprise addition to the Bruins roster. It featured a his first 2-goal performance in a 3-1 win against Anaheim on October 22nd. It featured a stint with Team Canada for the World Juniors. And now he's back, 20 years old, ready to get back to training camp and to continue to be a fixture on this team. He said everything kind of flew by. He didn't expect to be in position to make the Bruins. And he's just trying to take what he learned last year and bring it to camp this year. He said, quote, after surgery, he put on a little bit of weight, taking him time to work out and not worry about skating. Didn't skate for 3 months. And this summer's been all about getting back into shape, getting on the ice as much as possible, getting reps in, and feel the puck after not playing for so long. And expectations are pretty high for him coming in after his excellent rookie campaign. He played a lot of preseason games, which went well for him last year. This time he wants to come back into camp in better shape and be ready to play all 82 games. Now, that's kind of funny because when I looked online this morning, saw the Athletics latest prospect rankings, they had the Bruins at 29 and Poitras as like the third or fourth top prospect for the Bruins behind Dean Letourneau, Dan Zlotmelis, and up there with Fabian Lysell. And I believe it was Chris Peters who wrote he's not convinced Poitras will be a long-term NHLer. So still some doubters out there. Kind of crazy. I don't really understand how you can look at what Poitras did as a 19-year-old last season and not think that he can be an everyday long-term NHLer. Yes, he needs to bulk up a bit, and by all accounts, he did that. He's just trying to get back in game shape. Here's what Peters wrote, or sorry, it was Corey Pronman who wrote this about Poitras. He's a tough evaluation. He got off to a scorching hot start last season, making the Bruins as a teenager, looking like he belonged. 15 points in 33 games. Looked good on the power play. His game started to trail off toward mid-season, though, and his World Junior for Canada was average. He's very skilled and intelligent, makes a lot of difficult plays with the puck, and can run a pro power play. He can create off the edge, while also showing no fear of attacking the inside despite his 5'11" frame. All comes down to his skating. He's not that fast for a smaller forward, so will need to be excellent with the puck to have a long career. The guy saw in October in the NHL looked like that player, but we'll see how consistently he can play at that level. He's expected to make the Bruins again in a notable role, but I'm not 100% convinced he's a long-term NHL player. I don't know. To me, that doesn't really add up. Matt Poitras, for me, is here to stay and will be a Bruin for quite a while. All right, one other thing we learned over the weekend was David Pastrnak's one regret from last season, and we'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. David Pastrnak is coming off another masterful season for the Boston Bruins, playing all 82 games, scoring 47 goals, adding 63 assists, and helping the Bruins finish near the top of the NHL standings after losing a lot of notable players the previous summer. But he does have one regret from last season, which should help the Bruins try to take advantage here coming up. And he was, I believe, texting back and forth with Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts of Sportsnet, or maybe they were chatting on the phone anyways. And Friedman reported that Pastrnak had one regret from this past season, and it was that he and the Bruins could not force a Game 7 against the Florida Panthers. This was from his latest 32 Thoughts column, and he wrote the following. He said, Pastrnak has one regret from last season, that the Bruins did not get a one-shot Game 7 against Florida. But he admitted the Panthers were deeper and better than Boston. And he, like Coyle, is excited about their additions. Pastrnak told Friedman, quote, "We proved a lot of people wrong. Last year, we were not even supposed to make the playoffs. We beat a better team on paper in Toronto," end quote. And a lot of Toronto fans are picking up on this and saying, you know, they were out without Austin Matthews for a couple of games, William Nylander. If the Leafs had been fully healthy on paper, perhaps they would have beaten the Bruins. That's neither here nor there. Pastrnak scored that classic overtime goal in Game 7 to propel the Bruins to the next round. And the fact that he's not just resting on that and saying, yeah, we had a good season, we lost to Florida in Game 6, no shame in that he wanted to take them to at least a Game 7 to see what happens. That's a testament to his drive. And the fact that Brad Marchand missed a couple games in that series, it all kind of goes together. The Leafs lost some guys. The Bruins lost a key player. Who knows what would have happened if he had been healthy. Now, Pastrnak got married this summer. It was an awesome party. He's 28 years old, feeling pretty fulfilled off the ice. The one thing that is eluding him is that Stanley Cup, and hopefully they can get even closer to that here in 2025. I'm expecting a huge season from David Pastrnak here, as he will hopefully benefit from having a guy like Elias Lindholm down the middle. Zacha, Lindholm, Pastrnak should be one of the better lines in the NHL. And Lindholm, you know, he's not Patrice Bergeron, but he's kind of, if you're Canadian like me, you look at Bergeron as like the President's Choice brand. Maybe Lindholm is like the Walmart good value brand. I wouldn't go as far to call him the no-name brand, but you get what I'm saying. You have different levels, and he's not quite Patrice Bergeron, but he can perhaps challenge for some Selke votes. He can contribute offensively and should benefit David Pastrnak quite a bit here in this upcoming season. I'm very excited about the Bruins this year. I can't wait for training camp to get going. Hopefully that indeed does include Jeremy Swayman, as Jim Montgomery is confident in. And we'll bring you all the latest here on Locked On Boston Bruins, because that's what we do. We talk about your favorite team every single day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day today. Again, go check out Locked On NHL, where the season never ends. They're providing you national expertise with a local perspective, and you can find the link to Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't need to search. Locked On Bruins is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Monday, everybody. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.